Hi everyone, this is Natalie with Champion of Coins Tarot. I hope that you are doing very well today. I wanted to come on to film a review video of one of my favorite underrated low Scarabeo decks, which is the Tarot of Loka. This is actually not intended to be a divinatory tarot deck. This is a card game that is inspired by medieval games such as Scopa, which would have been played with the original Visconti versions of the tarot. However, I have solely used it for divinatory purposes. I've never actually played the card game. So I do want to give that disclaimer that this is very much a beautiful but a very simplistic deck that was originally intended for gameplay. This was originally published in 2014 by Riverhorse, which is a game company out of Europe. It was picked up by Low Scarabeo for printing and distribution. And so the versions of the deck that you're going to find available are in this classic Low Scarabeo tuck box. We have the Fool on the cover, and then we have a peek at the cards and the tagline, a card game for the whole family based off of medieval tarot games. It comes with a 64-page little white book, but it is printed in 6 different languages, so you really only get 11 or 12 pages per language. It goes into the gameplay, how to score with the deck, how much each of the cards are worth if you do decide to play it, along with optional rules depending on the number of players. And then you have this very small 2 paragraphs at the end explaining that even though, again, this is not intended for divination, you can do so and you can read reversals with this deck because it does have a small modification on the bottoms of the cards. Here are the backs of the deck. I actually really like this rich chocolate brown color. It feels very earthy. You have like this beautiful illustrative scrolling that is reminiscent of medieval fabrics, tapestries, illuminated manuscripts, which I find to be quite warm and inviting. And then you also have the 4 elemental symbols of the suits. For this deck, all of the suits have been changed to fire, water, earth, and air. We'll kind of see as we go along, that color scheme, that very elemental palette really colors the deck. Now let's go ahead and walk through the cards, starting with the Fool. This is kind of a traditional depiction of the Fool because you have the red bag, you have the feather in his cap, you have the rose in his teeth. I think that this is definitely a very romantic and idealistic version of the Fool. I get a lot of energy out of this card, very much speaking of going off on new adventures and specifically like of connections with other people, of like really putting yourself out there. Next we have the Magician, who I love just all of the details. You have the elements represented both in terms of the magical tools that are on the table, but also just richly embroidered into his clothing. Again, also fairly traditional with the red and white garments, but I also love that he seems to be very much inspired by like Mexican or Central American shamans. Have the High Priestess with the 2 pillars. I also like that the moon is kind of symbolized in this card with her headdress. Very beautiful. The Empress, who is of course on her throne, also with the moon imagery here, but you also do have kind of the traditional Visconti or Marseille imagery as well with the shield. So this is an empress who is very much a symbol of fertility and of femininity, of course, with her pregnant belly, but she also is equipped with all of the power of statehood. So love to see that. The Emperor ensconced on his throne. We have like this eagle companion next to him. And I should note at this point, even though the images are kind of doubles of one another, there is a very small triangle at the bottom. And the backs are also, not reversible. So if you wanted to read reversals with this deck, you certainly could. It is a little bit hard to see that triangle, but it is there. We have the Hierophant. I kind of love that he has kind of this sense of mystic power. Like he's holding the papal keys, of course, but then you have these really lovely ribbons that are surrounding him and his outstretched hand. The Lovers. Your typical Adam and Eve depiction without the angel. I also like that they are carving the heart into the tree because often, we think about choices with this card, about what we choose to love, what we choose to put our intention into, this kind of commitment that you make when you choose another person. And so even if that choice, even if that relationship might not last in the long run, it does leave a very deep impression on your heart. And so while I would not advocate for carving hearts into trees for environmental reasons, I do like that there is that kind of sense of like this kind of permanent change that comes about as a result of making a choice, romantic or otherwise. The Chariot. Lot of dynamic energy here, and you have the traditional black and white symbolism of the horses, the kind of different competing aspects of the psyche. Justice, also very traditional. You'll note that Justice is card 8 in this deck and Strength is card 11, so more in keeping with those medieval historical pip style decks. The Hermit, which is also just so magical to me. I love that he's looking down, he's concealed. It's almost like he is looking into another realm, another plane, as opposed to being connected to daily life. The Wheel of Fortune. Strength. Just quite beautiful. I really love the lion in this card. The Hanged Man. And he's a very joyful hanged man. You can tell that he's just like reveling in his solitude. This is exactly the change of perspective that he needed. Death. Which I think this is probably my favorite major in the deck. I love that you have the disembodied heads of the Fool, the Emperor, the Empress, and the Hierophant before him. Also a lot of movement. Like, I just feel such a wonderful fiery energy from this deck. Temperance, which is very serene, of course. The Fiend, or the Devil. And instead of having embodied figures, you have the man and the woman kind of decorating this box, like decorating this stand that he is on. And I kind of like that because it gives me almost like Pandora's box vibes in a sense. This is very much about kind of the devil himself, I think. This is very much about kind of the embodiment of our worst fears or our addictions or those patterns of behavior that trap us. And it really kind of emphasizes the enormity that you can feel when faced with that. It kind of plays down the agency in terms of the actual symbolism on this card because, again, you don't have these embodied figures. But it works. Like, he's very formidable, and I would not want to cross him. The Tower. The Star, which is very lovely. I love that you have the 7 kind of stars interwoven in her hair. She's just like the literal embodiment of hope and of light. The moon. I like that you have the face of the skull in the moon itself, gazing at its own reflection. I think that's really powerful. The sun. This is a very happy baby riding on a horse. This is just such a joyful sun card. This is honestly one of my favorites. I love the face of the sun as well. Judgment. She's very formidable. But I do like that you have this new growth coming out of the skull. I think this really speaks to rejuvenation and the ending of old cycles and the beginning of new ones, and how there is still hope and there is still opportunity, even in the death of something. So I like how this card really kind of relates and really parallels with the death card in this deck. They also both are holding the hourglass. I forgot to point that out, but death is holding the hourglass in that card as well. So I like how those two are linked. And then you have the world. And so she's wreathed in the elements, as opposed to having the representatives of the different angels or the different gospel writers that you would have in more traditional historical inspired decks. And then since this is a playing card deck, you do have 2 additional cards that are meant to be included in gameplay. One is good, and then one is evil. And they are the same, except that the infinity symbol is linking different elements. So in good, you have earth and air that are linked, and in evil, you have fire and water. And I do keep these 2 in the deck. I find that they add just a little bit of spice, a little bit of fun to readings. Like if the good card shows up for me, then I would interpret the entire spread more positively as like these are some blessings that are coming in. And with evil, I would kind of interpret the cards in their more shadowy aspect and really think about what do I need to let go of? What is no longer serving me? How can I create more space to bring good into my life? And I think it's interesting that earth and air, those are very much associated with the body and the mind. And so thinking about how when those are in harmony, we are really able to be our best selves, to do our best embodied work in the world. And then with fire and water, those are 2 very, very volatile elements. Definitely, I think there's so much strength and so much creativity that can be drawn from our emotions. However, they can also lead us to be very impulsive or to be very destructive. So again, I view this more as a call to be able to balance out that energy within yourself and to move towards a more balanced and more aligned path. So those are the 2 bonus cards. Now let's go ahead and get into the minors, and these are very pippish. Again, they're playing cards, but you do have the elemental symbols and you do have this very beautiful illustrative style that lends a lot of continuity. So we have ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we're back to the illustrations for the court cards. So here we have the Jack, which would correspond with the page. I like that in all of the courts, we're going to get some kind of traditional like Dungeons and Dragons style fantasy creatures. So we have this very fiery goblin scout, which is great. For the knight, we have kind of like this dragon horse thing, which just so much embodies, I think, the fiery nature and kind of that take no prisoners feeling that you can sometimes get with the Knight of Wands. The Queen of Fire. She's kind of like a demoness. And then the King of Fire, who is definitely more humanoid, but he very much reminds me of like a fire elemental, like somebody who truly embodies all of the qualities of this element, and is very much in tune with it. And then we have water, and this is more icy, like these are icicles. I am skipping relatively quickly because I don't have like a lot of commentary since these are not illustrated. I will say that I read intuitively with this deck. It doesn't come with any meanings whatsoever. And so that has allowed me to really play around and to apply both my knowledge of the Rider-Waite-Smith system, but also especially with the Tarot de Marseille meanings of the cards, because I go based off of what the element represents to me and then what the number represents to me. And I've just had a lot of really fun results with that. So here is the Jack, or the Page of Water. And this is very spooky, very skeletal. I'm honestly still trying to work out what that means to me all of these years later. But I do like that the quartz, again, have this very icy quality to them. I think we think of water as being a very fluid, dynamic force, and it absolutely is. But to me, these really symbolize what happens when you're able to solidify an emotion, like when you're able to identify what it is and to truly be able to work with it. A very skeletal Pegasus for our Knight of Water. You have this ice demon for the Queen of Cups. I think she's very beautiful, and I like that she has the cup very close to her chest. Yeah, just like really speaking from the heart, acting from the heart center. And then this amazing Lich King for the King of Cups. Again, that icy quality like really makes me think about mastering the emotions. And then you have the Suit of Air, which is golden. And I quite like that. And this is what really helped me, honestly, to break out of seeing swords or seeing air as being a negative in the overall tarot ecosystem, because it's really not. I think that this really speaks a lot to the amazing potency of our ideas, kind of that sense of joy and enlightenment that we have when we think of something new and amazing, when we're able to communicate in a really effective way in aim of our desires and in aim of our highest good and that of others. So yeah, I think a lot about kind of cultivating joy and cultivating a healthier relationship with my mind when doing workings with this deck. And then these are all really inspired by griffins. And so you have these griffin feathers on all of the quartz in this suit. This is a very dynamic Jack or Page of Air. I just like really love his ferocity. Like, let's go, let's think of something new. Let's apply all of our talent and all of our mental force to overcoming an obstacle. We have the Griffin as the Knight of Air. Just so beautiful. This is one of my favorite Queen of Swords ever, or Queen of Air ever. She is just ready to go, like just full on Valkyrie battle mode. Just so strong and assured of herself, and just has this eagle-eyed clarity. And then the King of Air. And I love that he has this eagle with him. It's a great callback to the Emperor card, but I think also, again, speaks of this mastery and this kind of harmony with the element that you see within the Kings in tarot. And then lastly, we have the suit of Earth with this beautiful floral motif. These very verdant leaves. I mean, I just love the strong colors in this deck. That's the through line with all of my favorite decks for me, is being able to have a very bright color scheme where all of the suits are very visually distinctive from one another. It makes it so much more accessible to be able to read a larger spread. And we have this dwarf for the Jack or the Page of Earth. Absolutely love him. Huge D&D vibes, huge fantasy vibes. He reminds me a lot of the Dwarves of Orzammar in the Dragon Age series. It's my favorite video game series. We have a centaur for the Knight of Earth. And this is the only humanoid knight in the deck, which is quite interesting. He has like these moose antlers as well. I love this Queen of Earth. This is another one of my favorite cards in the deck. It has this druidic quality, this harmony between the self and nature. She's literally half human, half tree. And so I love just that Gaia energy, that recognition and understanding that we are all part of the earth, and that we are all part of this beautiful cycle of seasonality, of bloom and decay, of giving and of receiving. And then lastly, we have the King of Earth, who is also a very druidic figure. I love that he has this staff that's an olive branch. To me, that really speaks about how peace is like the ultimate goal. Like, I'm thinking about Teddy Roosevelt, like, walk loudly and carry a big stick. It's easy to go to war with other people, right? But it's so much harder to be able to cultivate peace, to find understanding, and to share what you have with other people instead of being defensive or instead of reacting from a place of fear and scarcity. So I really love him too. He's great. So the cardstock is like this old quality Lo Scarabeo cardstock, which is just so rich and beautiful and velvety and buttery. This is my favorite cardstock of all time, and so I find a really great tactile experience working with the deck. I'm just going to shuffle a few times and then pull some cards to look at while I give some more thoughts about my experience reading and working with this deck. So as I have mentioned before, I have had this deck since 2016, and this is one of the few pip decks that I have really kept and held on to over time. I love that this is just such an intuitive reader. This is the first deck that I got that came without any kind of guidebook, without any kind of pre-associated meanings with it. And so it was just so wonderful to be able to write my own notes, to kind of create my own understanding based off of the artwork and based off of my own personal elemental experience. I find that this deck works well in spreads, but it is best like just totally reading intuitively, just like going in and pulling cards without any kind of preconceived notion or question in mind, and just allowing it to speak for itself. The voice is very simple. It says a lot in very few cards. And it's also one that is just very fun to talk to. I think because the intuitive messages are so punchy, I often end up just kind of asking follow-up questions and building like this bigger and bigger pile of cards as we go through the conversation together. And that has been very delightful. I also enjoy traveling with this deck, just having it with me in my purse and I do actually use this in Dungeons and Dragons. I think any tarot reader who plays D&D has at one point or another created a psychic reader for the sole, or like a psychic player character, for the sole purpose of being able to read tarot at the D&D table. And that has been so fun. And so I've had a lot of friends really enjoy readings with this deck, really enjoy the fantasy art style. Overall, it's one that is just fiery, it's fun, it's punchy, it's talkative, and I really enjoy every time that I pull it out. Like, I never walk away from a reading, even if difficult themes come up, without a smile on my face, knowing that we can confidently move forward and get the job done. So that is my little review and walkthrough video of the Tarot of Loka. Let me know if you have this deck and what your experiences with it have been like. I would be very curious to hear from you as well. As always, I am sending you much love and much light upon your journey. Bye, everyone.